Good morning. Today we're going to take a look at Napoleon Returns by Worthington Games. Played this last night for the first time. Absolutely great game. And I thought I would give you a really quick intro on how to play the game. It shouldn't really take too long. It's only got 4 pages of rules, and let's go. The first thing you're going to do is get out your player aid and flip it over to the back side and look at the setup and set up all your units on the board according to the setup here. And you want your units facing towards yourself, your own units facing towards yourself, so your enemy can't see who is who. I've set up the board with the blocks face up, which is incorrect, just so you can kind of see which units are where. And I've also put a yellow marker on each one of the possible objective locations. The French player will choose 2 of 5 locations randomly. You'll put these face down. He'll draw 2, keep those secret. And what he's going to try to do is to get a troop into one of these towns, 2 of these objectives by the end of the turn, or destroy 3 of the 8 core. Personally, what I would recommend for your first game is to do just the locations. And then if you want a more advanced version of the game, I would say do 1 location and this as a mandatory card. Be kind of interesting to play that out. I haven't done it yet, but I just thought that'd be a great way to play. So each one of the troops on the board is located on these cards. The Allies get 2 cards, one for the Prussian, one for the British, and then the French get 2 of these. And at the top, you'll see the tactical rating, which is used for counterattacks. These are the number of cards that you get when you're in combat, and then you're going to place a cube on the far left of every single one of these units. And as you take battle fatigue, you're going to go down, and then there is a possibility of getting your combat cards reduced before the potential elimination. You'll also see Napoleon is up here, who has a tactical rating of 3, and he gets 3 combat cards. Now we've got our cards laid out with the cubes on the very far left position, as we discussed. You'll need a bit of room for this game, just because the cards have to sit out to the sides, and those you kind of track the health of each type of unit. The very first thing that happens each turn is the dice is rolled to determine weather. And you'll notice at the top here we have the turn track, the base movement for the Allied player and the Prussian player, and then the weather is right here. So we're going to roll a die, and all the indicators are underneath here. So we're going to roll a die and see if there's rain. There's no rain, so it's clear. 1 to 5 is clear. And basically what rain does is prevents you from being able to do forced marches, and that's pretty much the only effect on the game. So infantry moves 1 and cavalry moves 2, and then infantry has the ability to force march during clear weather for taking a cohesion point. So you can move 2 spaces and take a hit, but eventually that's going to wear you down to your unit, and you don't get these back. There's no way to really recover. Each player has a base number of movement points they can do, and then you're going to roll a die, and then you'll see the numbers underneath. If you roll a 1, 2, or 2, 1 or 2, you get a 5, 3 or 4, you get a 6, 5 or 6, you get a 7, and the same thing applies to the Allied players up top. So the sequence of play is determining weather, which we've already done. French player movement, so now we're going to determine how many points we get for movement. French player combat, which is basically if we bring our blocks together, we'll go through a sequence of play for there, and we won't draw our cards until we get into battle. So the deck is shuffled each time. You can just divide it in half if you want. French player combat, then the Allied player Prussian movement, Allied player Prussian combat, and determine if there's victory. So victory is basically if I take my 2 objectives as the French player and I have those achieved. So let's roll for French movement. 5. So since we rolled a 5, we look here in the chart, and that takes up to 7 movement points. So the cavalry can move 2, so we're going to try to move him a little faster. So we go 1, 2, And we're putting him in support in case we decide to go into battle here. And I'll show you how to bring in reserves in just a minute. We will bring in the first corps to here. Napoleon moves for free. The Imperial Guard will move up to here. Corps. Okay, there's no combat because nobody came in contact with each other. And now it is the Prussian player's turn, or the British player's turn. 2. So they will get a base of 3 movements for the British, and then the Prussian will get 3 as well. So the Prussian player may decide to back up to here. So that's 1 for them. 2, Blucher's free. 3, that's it for them. And 1, cavalry can move 2. And that's pretty much it. So now it's the end of the turn. There's been no combat. And we'll move the turn marker up to turn 2. And now we go back to the beginning of the turn where we checked for weather again. So we're going to roll a die. 6. So that means the French player cannot, or both players cannot do forced marches. And again, that takes away from your cohesion if you decide to do that. French player movement. 2. So he gets to move 5 units. And he will bring up Napoleon. And the 4th Cavalry will have to take a hit on cohesion here. On 4th Corps, I'm sorry. So over on the left-hand side here, get our board set up. We'll just move that down to 6. All right, so now we've got combat. The Prussian player can voluntarily withdraw from combat, but they will take a hit on cohesion in each one of those units in the battle. But since he's got Napoleon outnumbered here, we should be good to go. So this is the way the cards work. On each one of the cards, you're going to have a starting combat cards value. So we'll take our deck and we'll draw out, let's see, the 2nd and 1st Corps gets 5 cards. And then the French player will get 3 for Napoleon and 3 for the 5th Corps. Okay, so let's go back to our player aid for a second. Since the French player is the attacker, we're going to look at the cards that we have in our hand and kind of compare it to this chart. So if you play an infantry card, it can be matched by an infantry assault or a combined arms. So combined arms is the most powerful card here. It's the only card that has to be challenged by a combined arms card in order to beat the attacker. So round 1, the French player has a grand battery, which is good. Cavalry charge, good. Cavalry charge. Skirmish, skirmish, and a grand battery. So we want to try to play a card that they won't be able to match. You can look at the ratios here and see there are 12 infantry assaults, 12 grand batteries, 12 skirmish, 12 cavalry, and 10 combined arms and 10 counterattacks. So we don't have any combined arm cards. So let's play a cavalry charge. All right, so now the Prussian player has to match or beat that. He does not have any. Oh, there's a combined arms card, so he can play that. And he has effectively removed that combat right there. All right, so now it's the Prussian player's turn to either attack or retreat. And he will play infantry assault. So the French player does not have infantry assault, and they have basically lost that round of combat. So now they're going to have to retreat. They're going to take a point on the unit for retreating, and then a point for the combat itself, bring them down 2 points on the 4th Cavalry, or the 4th Corps. So it brings us down to 4 on their morale track over here. So now we're down to 4. So we're getting close to getting one less tactical card for that unit. That's basically all of the rules as far as how the game plays. Of course, at the end of a turn, when that marker moves up to the next turn, if the French player has taken both their objectives, so in this case, we want to have Ghent and Liege, which are here. We just put markers out here to help see where the objective markers are for the Prussian player or the British player. So if you have both of those, you would win the game. So there's a feinting mechanic that goes around as far as trying to maneuver and make sure that the British player doesn't know where you're going. The British player is just basically trying to stop the French from getting to their goals. That's pretty much it. I've heard it's fairly difficult to eliminate 3 units, and that's why I was saying if you want a more advanced version of the game, you might try doing the eliminate 3 units and 1 objective. And one thing nice about that, too, is it kind of gives you more leeway as far as feinting and which way you're going to go, or how to apply your forces. If you want to do a big blob running right up the middle and just power through everybody. But really fun game. Lots of good trapping mechanics. And it was unexpected last night. So we had the British player was down here with a big giant blob kind of attacking into here. And he had almost all of his units except for 1 back there in this blob here. And I had the cavalry here, which kind of snuck up and went through this way. And then I put units here to stop him from being able to intercede. One thing I forgot to mention is that during each round of combat, you can also bring in your reserves. That's where the tactical rating comes in. So if you do 1 round of combat, and then after the combat, you check to see if your reserve come into battle. So let's say we wanted to bring this cavalry into here, into a battle. We roll his tactical rating or less. So typically it's a 1 or a 2. I think Napoleon might be a 3. So you can bring additional units into a battle from the adjacent square in the next round of combat. So very fun game. I was really surprised by this, how simple it was. And I just wanted to take a few minutes and see. There are a couple things I forgot to mention, that if you do participate in a combat, even as the defender or the attacker, you're still going to take cohesion losses. So the player aid does a great job of kind of reminding you of this. So cohesion losses happen on combat losses based on combat rounds. So if you did 2 rounds of combat, you're going to lose 2 cohesion points. Extra movement for the force march, like we talked about. Retreats. So that's another thing we talked about. One-time cohesion loss for each Allied or Prussian corps at the end of any turn when the French occupy any of the following: Ghent, Brussels, Antwerp, and Liege. So units can only be involved in 1 combat per side. So like if you've got a combat going on, you cannot bring them in as reinforcements on another square. Units can only be involved in 1 movement per side's turn. Cavalry can move 2 locations instead of 1. Infantry can move 1 location for 1 movement point and 1 cohesion point reduction, except for in rain. Tactical rating is used to determine the success of counterattacks and reinforcements. And we didn't really go over the cards, but again, there's a nice explanation on each card of how the the different types have different effects. So combined arm matches any card played by the attacker. Again, this guide is probably the best way to go for everything. Cavalry, if unmatched, increase the defender combat loss by 1. So they would take an additional cohesion hit for that attack. Grand Battery is good against Grand Battery. That's about it. Counterattack, automatic counterattack by defenders. So if the attacker uses this card, the defender automatically gets to counterattack without rolling his tactical rating to see if he can counterattack. And then infantry assault itself is just matched by infantry assault. And again, everything is beaten by combined arms. So that's the best card to have. If you have one and you're looking to knock somebody out, that may be a good card to play early on, or it could be a good card to play later on if you're trying to just wear them down. If they've got a bunch of cards and you want to play infantry assault, and you see them starting to use combined arms to react to stuff, which is the best card, you might be able to do another combined arms, and they probably won't have it. Thanks for watching. Again, this was Napoleon Returns 1815 by Worthington Games. Absolutely wonderful game. I highly recommend it.